When a mining colony was established on a barren, uninhabitable planet, the humans threatened war if it was not abandoned immediately. Apparently this planet, which they call Earth, is sacred to them. Our scans had indicated that planet 410 EN had been previously inhabited by intelligent life, but had not been so for many centuries due to high levels of harmful radiation. Thus, in accordance with Galactic Federation law, we publicly submitted a formal mining claim for the barren planet's surprisingly vast amount of underground resources. After waiting the required period of contest, and after receiving no protest to this claim, we sent a small number of colonization ships to begin extracting resources. Nothing about this colonization had been any different from the countless other missions that we, or anyone else in the Federation, had conducted since the Third Galactic Unification event. Such was the first few seasons on 410 EN as the colony flourished on the planet's surface, trading outposts were established in low planetary orbit, and our hope for revitalizing our economy grew just a little more. We were unaware of the planet's cultural significance to what was a previously unknown species we now all know as humans or Terrans. As I'm sure you're aware, this species was previously known as apekin, but is no longer due to the most recent Federation hate speech guidelines. Sorry, I digress. Anyways, almost a local year after the colony's founding, we had our first contact with the humans when a Terran Republic patrol warped into the system without detection via a previously unnoticed FTL beacon located by 410 EN's moon. Their sudden appearance caused a near collision with a Umar Kingdom freighter, which fired warning shots at them as they assumed they were under attack from pirates. This unfortunately also marked our first conflict with the Terran Republic, resulting in the Umar ship being heavily damaged along with 16 system police vessels that responded to the distress calls. It was only when a Federation warstrike group warped in many moments later in which the Terran ship ceased its firing and made hailing attempts. Apparently, from what we were initially able to understand via our auto-translators, 410 EN was a highly sacred religious site for the Terrans. Earth, as they called it, was their birth planet, and although it was unoccupied, they considered it as a core planet for their species. It was still inhabitable to them due to their lower radiation resistance, but they apparently made annual pilgrimages to the planet to reflect on their roots and pay tribute to those who were unable to flee when some sort of large nuclear disaster claimed the lives of most of the living creatures on the planet. After an entire daylight cycle on 410 EN, negotiations with the Terrans still had not made much progress. Their language was so different from the 26 planet states of the Federation that most of the day had been spent waiting for the translators to interpret their speech and for clarifying questions to be sent back and forth. One point of speech had been made extremely clear however, and that was the Terrans' demand for us to complete vacate the planet and return it to its pre-colonized state immediately. Resistance to this demand would be considered an act of war. The Federation still did not have much of a first contact protocol back then, as you may remember that prior to the humans' appearance, it was widely taught that life only existed within our small star cluster, and so we already had made contact with each other before the Federation was even a thing. We had seen their patrol of 6 relatively medium-sized starships defeat the Umar and system police ships with ease, and so we obviously had the brains to not immediately begin attacking them after their threat. We had no idea of their ships' capabilities and level of technology. The Star Admiral of the strike group was eventually able to ease tensions and arrange a proper ceasefire and ceasing of mining activities until a diplomatic team could arrive on the scene. When they did arrive after many tense and uncomfortable moments, the Terrans had seemed to calm down as the translators indicated a more polite and inviting tone shift from the previous threatening and aggressive reading. Our diplomats began with gaining more general knowledge about them as a species with the underlying goal of figuring out their technological abilities, how much of a threat they were to the Federation, and if they could be persuaded to let us keep 410 EN. We learned that they were fairly close to our technological level, except with an emphasis of using more ballistic-type weapons and nuclear steam engines for their energy creation. We were a bit disturbed to learn that they were able to easily take down our ships simply because their culture was extremely militarized. They apparently suffered from the irritations of piracy as much as we did, and so thought the Umar and system police were some pirates with odd technology. 410 EN was indeed their birth planet, and they had evacuated it about 300 local years ago after an extremely large nuclear power plant in the Antarctic region of the once green planet suffered a catastrophic meltdown. This caused the entire mostly icy continent to begin melting, raising the planet's sea levels and contaminating the ocean water with extremely radioactive runoff. Though the destruction of the planet was not immediate, the humans simply did not have enough time to relocate their population elsewhere. Their star travel abilities were relatively lacking and was restricted to non-FTL speeds back then. Their closest habitable star system was 4.2 light-years away, and with their primary energy source now poisoning them, they only had enough resources and time to evacuate about 10% of their population. The remainder had died on Earth from either the radiation sickness or worldwide flooding. It took a few more local daylight cycles to come to agreements, but eventually an extremely long list of terms and conditions was laid out by the Terran Republic, which was wearily accepted by the Federation. The highlight consisted of us still having mining rights over the system, but only on a smaller, red planet in the system designated as 410 EO. We could also have mining rights a smaller 9th planet in the system, as the Terrans did not consider it as a planet for unknown reasons. As scans showed that the 2 planets had a considerable amount of precious elements much deeper into their crusts, it was a concession we could accept.
Additionally, we learned that although the Terrans had successfully colonized in their neighboring system in what they called Proxima Centauri b, a sloppy name at that, their colonization efforts were not going well in recent years. A team of our experimenters had actually found that they would have only been able to sustain themselves for another century or so before collapse due to a variety of failures. Thus, they requested probationary statehood into the Federation, with a small amount of subsidies in the forms of loans to help them improve and maintain their colony.
Though we were initially not as willing to allow them this privilege, their additional offer to greatly contribute to anti-piracy patrols was one we could not pass up, as none of us were anywhere as adept as they were with military tactics and tradition. This is why they make up 70% of our current security forces, although only consisting around 16% of Federation citizenry. Because of them, piracy is at the lowest point in any time in history, and so is general unrest galaxy-wide. So, with that brief history in mind, we now come to the topic at hand. Their probationary status is up for review in the next coming days, so we must now consider whether we should cancel it, extend it, or promote them to full statehood. Though our first contact was rough, I do believe they've earned their place. However, Federation law does require that full states have the privilege of using our health and well-being budget to ensure the habitability of their core worlds. This does mean that we will be obligated to restore 410 EN to a full state of habitability, which may cost us hundreds of trillions of credits just to clear the radiation spills and reintroduce local fauna, which the Terrans at least already have samples of. Are we willing to promote them for their hard work at the cost of our entire health and well-being budget for the next 1.4 Federation cycles? What say the Council?